Detective Mara Quinn stood beneath the storm-darkened sky as the lifeless body of wrestling legend Hulk Hogan was pulled from the drifting speedboat. A shocking discovery that would unravel a web of betrayal, secret identities, and international crime. The summer heat of Clearwater Beach, Florida, pressed against the shoreline like a heavy blanket, while storm clouds gathered slowly over the horizon. It was early morning when a lone jogger followed the familiar path along the private pier that stretched into the Gulf. The jogger's rhythm slowed at the sight of a luxury speedboat drifting without direction. The vessel rocked lightly against the pilings, its engine silent, and its deck strangely empty of movement. Drawn by an uneasy feeling, the jogger stepped closer and noticed the faint smell of gasoline carried by the humid breeze. When the jogger finally peered inside, the sight was both shocking and unforgettable. There lay the lifeless body of wrestling icon Hulk Hogan, a figure whose larger-than-life presence had defined an era of sports entertainment. His broad frame, once full of energy and bravado, now lay unnaturally still. There were no signs of a struggle and no visible injuries, only a chilling stillness that seemed to swallow the morning air. News of the discovery spread quickly, igniting a wave of disbelief among fans and neighbors who had grown used to the idea that Hogan was indestructible. Reporters rushed to the scene, helicopters hovered above the coastline, and local authorities sealed off the area as the first drops of rain began to fall. The initial observations puzzled investigators. Personal belongings that should have been on the boat were missing: his wallet, a set of keys, and a custom gold chain he was known to wear at all times. Even stranger was the single red feather resting near the driver's console, its color stark against the pale fiberglass. It was a detail so out of place that detectives photographed it repeatedly, unsure whether it was a clue or a cruel coincidence. By midday, the pier was a storm of flashing lights, curious onlookers, and hushed speculation. Longtime residents whispered about seeing a small boat moving through the dark water hours before sunrise, but no one could describe it clearly. Weather reports warned of a severe thunderstorm, adding urgency to the efforts of investigators who worked quickly to preserve every piece of evidence before the rain washed it away. As the skies opened and heavy rain began to pour, the mystery of what had happened to Hulk Hogan deepened. What began as a quiet Florida morning had transformed into the start of a case that would capture worldwide attention and reveal layers of secrets far darker than anyone could have imagined. Detective Mara Quinn arrived at the marina as lightning flashed across the darkening sky, her sharp eyes scanning every detail. Years of experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and from the moment she stepped onto the slick wooden boards, she sensed that this was no simple accident. The medical examiner's preliminary report only deepened the puzzle. There were no blunt force injuries or signs of drowning. Instead, a small puncture mark was found on the side of Hulk Hogan's neck, barely visible beneath the skin. Toxicology tests revealed traces of a rare veterinary sedative, powerful enough to render a man of Hogan's size unconscious within seconds. It was a chemical almost impossible to obtain without insider connections, immediately suggesting a carefully planned attack. Quinn's team moved quickly to secure the surrounding area, searching for any sign of forced entry or struggle. Security cameras positioned along the pier should have offered clear footage of the night's events, but every device had been disabled hours before dawn. The wires were neatly cut, leaving no fingerprints. Whoever had done this possessed both precision and knowledge of the marina's layout. Forensic specialists found faint smudges of oil along the railing of the speedboat, as though someone had deliberately wiped away prints but missed a trace. Even the gasoline odor carried meaning. It hinted at an attempt to stage an accident, or perhaps burn evidence before being interrupted. Attention soon turned to the victim's financial records. Hogan's accounts revealed a series of large wire transfers made over the past 6 months to an offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. The recipient's name remained hidden behind layers of encryption, but the transaction notes repeatedly referenced a mysterious alias, Red Phoenix. The code name became the focal point of every briefing. Who or what was Red Phoenix? And what leverage did they hold over one of wrestling's most iconic figures? As the storm outside intensified, Quinn reviewed Hogan's recent movements. Witnesses reported that he had been unusually cautious in the weeks leading up to his death, avoiding public appearances and canceling scheduled interviews without explanation. Associates described him as distracted and tense, though none could say why. A search of his private phone turned up deleted messages that digital forensics partially recovered, revealing vague warnings about a meeting at the pier and the need to finish the deal before it's too late. Each new discovery drew a darker picture. This was not the random tragedy the public first believed. Someone had hunted the legend with patience and skill, leaving behind a trail of cryptic clues that hinted at long-buried grudges and a dangerous secret waiting to be exposed. Detective Quinn widened the scope of her investigation, focusing on those closest to Hulk Hogan. The first to draw suspicion was his longtime business manager, a man who had once handled every contract and appearance. Records showed a bitter fallout weeks earlier over a lucrative merchandise deal that Hogan abruptly canceled. Emails recovered from Hogan's laptop revealed tense exchanges about missing profits and accusations of betrayal, while the manager maintained a calm public image. Private financial statements showed mounting debt and a sudden cash infusion the day after Hogan's death. Investigators flagged the deposit but lacked proof that it was tied to the crime. Attention then shifted to an old rival from Hogan's wrestling days, a former champion known for grudges and dramatic feuds. Despite claiming to be overseas during the night of the murder, flight records placed him in Miami 2 days before the body was found. Security footage from a Clearwater hotel lobby confirmed he had checked in under a false name. When questioned, he offered a vague explanation about visiting friends and quickly hired a lawyer. The discovery raised more questions than answers, feeding rumors of a personal vendetta stretching back decades. Even Hogan's family could not escape scrutiny. Investigators learned of a contested will that had been updated only months earlier. Instead of dividing his estate evenly, Hogan had designated a secret beneficiary whose identity remained sealed. Close relatives admitted to being blindsided by the change and described growing tension at recent family gatherings. A search of Hogan's home uncovered a small locked box hidden beneath the floorboards, containing unsigned legal documents and a photograph of an unidentified woman standing beside a man wearing a crimson feather pendant, a detail that chilled the investigative team. Digital forensics revealed more startling evidence. Encrypted emails between Hogan and someone using the alias Red Phoenix spoke of unfinished business, a cryptic phrase that appeared repeatedly. The messages hinted at a meeting to resolve a long-standing dispute but gave no specifics. Metadata traced the emails to an international server network designed to hide the sender's location, suggesting the involvement of someone skilled in cyber operations. Each lead deepened the mystery rather than solving it. Motives overlapped: money, revenge, hidden alliances. Detective Quinn began to suspect that Hogan's death was not the result of a single enemy but part of a larger web of resentment and secrecy. With every layer she uncovered, the line between personal vendetta and organized crime grew thinner, setting the stage for revelations that threatened to shake the wrestling world and the quiet town of Clearwater alike. Detective Quinn pursued the trail of the mysterious alias with relentless focus, following financial records and encrypted correspondence across international borders. The offshore account linked to Red Phoenix led to a defunct shell company registered in Macau, a haven for shadowy business dealings. Paperwork for the company listed false names and empty offices, but deeper digging revealed ties to a former wrestling promoter who had once managed Hogan during the early days of his career. Their history was rocky, marked by lawsuits over unpaid earnings and accusations of backroom deals. Though the legal battle had been settled quietly years ago, insiders whispered that bitterness never faded. The promoter's name resurfaced in obscure wrestling forums where anonymous users hinted at old grudges and secret alliances, feeding Quinn's suspicion that this man was more than a forgotten figure from the past. Surveillance footage offered the next breakthrough. A nearby marina's outdated security system had captured a faint image just after midnight on the night of Hogan's death. The grainy video showed a hooded figure boarding a small skiff and heading toward the private pier where the speedboat would later be found. The most striking detail was the object swinging from the figure's neck, a crimson feather charm that glimmered briefly under the dim lights before the boat disappeared into darkness. When forensic experts compared the blurry figure's movements to known footage of the former promoter, subtle similarities emerged in height and posture. DNA analysis soon added weight to the theory. A microscopic sample lifted from the speedboat's railing matched a genetic profile linked to the promoter's distant relative, a cousin who had worked security for wrestling events years earlier. The evidence suggested a carefully orchestrated plan that required both family loyalty and insider knowledge. Yet the promoter himself remained out of reach. traveling between countries with no permanent address and communicating only through encrypted channels. Quinn's team followed the trail to an abandoned warehouse near the docks where the skiff had been rented. Inside, they discovered a hidden compartment containing empty sedative vials identical to the substance found in Hogan's toxicology report. Among the scattered items lay a single photograph of Hogan during his early wrestling days, the edges burned as if someone had tried to destroy it. Each clue strengthened the case against the elusive promoter, but the absence of a direct confession kept the investigation tense. The detective knew she was closing in, yet the feeling that another twist awaited lingered like the thick salt air before a storm, promising that the mystery was far from over. Weeks after the discovery of the burned photograph, a sudden break in the case came from an unexpected corner of the Gulf. A damaged navigation buoy, retrieved by a fishing crew after a violent storm, held a waterproof drive lodged inside its metal casing. Investigators believed it had been intentionally hidden and dislodged by the rough seas. When the contents were examined, the drive revealed a series of video journals recorded by Hulk Hogan himself. In the final entry, his voice carried an edge of fear as he spoke of a covert deal to expose a criminal network operating within the wrestling industry, an organization that laundered money through international promotions and paid off officials to keep their operations invisible. He mentioned being threatened by someone from his past who used the name Red Phoenix and warned that if anything happened to him, the footage would surface. Detective Quinn used the revelations to set a trap. With international warrants secured, her team monitored communication channels known to be used by the promoter believed to be behind the Red Phoenix identity. Weeks of careful observation paid off when an encrypted message revealed travel plans to a private airstrip in Lisbon. Working with global authorities, Quinn coordinated a covert operation. The promoter arrived at the airstrip disguised under a different passport, only to be confronted by a multinational task force. The arrest was quiet but decisive, ending a chase that had spanned continents. During interrogation, the promoter maintained a cold silence, but financial records and the DNA match from the speedboat railing were impossible to dismiss. Investigators pieced together the motive. Years earlier, Hogan had uncovered evidence of the promoter's involvement in organized crime and had threatened to expose it. The offshore payments were blackmail money meant to delay the inevitable. When Hogan decided to go public despite the secret transfers, the promoter orchestrated his death to protect a network worth millions. The trial that followed became an international spectacle. Fans and media flooded the courthouse, stunned as the layers of corruption within the wrestling world unfolded. Although the promoter was convicted of murder and conspiracy, lingering questions remained. The waterproof drive hinted at larger players in the criminal ring who were never identified. Detectives never found the skiff used to reach Hogan's boat, and several encrypted accounts linked to Red Phoenix continued to operate in silence. Even with a conviction, Detective Quinn knew the story was unfinished. Hulk Hogan's death, born from ambition, betrayal, and buried secrets, left behind a legacy of unanswered mysteries that continued to cast a long shadow over the world he once dominated.